Morning, Pat. How are you this morning? I
Grand
suppose you're
Jude.
a happier man now that Micheál Martin has been made your Taoiseach.
I'm absolutely delighted. The same old, same old. What is it? Since the foundation of the state, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have been there for nearly, I think, on each and every occasion.
And look at the fine man it is made of you too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to look at trying to squeeze in 3 stories this morning and have to keep an eye on the time as well. It's interesting now that there's 2 that I spotted, and they're both from the RTE News Now website. And I noticed on BBC Radio 4 in their morning programme, their news programme today, they say we now have a look at the main stories in the newspapers and on the main websites, news websites.
Yeah.
So websites are essentially challenging, not challenging, but they're certainly supplementary to the print editions of the newspapers, certainly.
Absolutely.
So anyway, maybe come back to that to the general topic, but then the first story from the RTE News Now website is about this ruling by the Supreme Court in America that a margin of 7-2, that Trump will have to hand over his financial records, including his tax returns. He must hand them over to a prosecutor in New York City. That's the good news. The bad news is that the Democratic-led congressional committees, where the guys want to get their hands on them, they won't be allowed to see them, not at least until after the election. So what do you think's going to be the impact of that, Pat?
Well, you know, so I honestly believe, I don't think Trump's the problem anymore. I think his supporters are. You know, I think we all know, or at least most thinking people know, Trump's a crook. And like as track record, the very fact that he won't allow his tax affairs to be seen or any oversight of them, other presidents have. From the outside, he has ensured that no one gets to see his tax. So I think a lot of things, even paying off people of certain ill repute, might come up and all. So he's made sure that his tax affairs have remained confidential. So if you're president of America, I think you should be whiter than white. But the bottom line of it is, Jude, if you already pointed out yourself, it'll be after the election. Though it does one more time, I think it's just like another nail in his coffin. A lot of people must be saying to themselves at this stage, wait a minute, what's he got to hide? If he has nothing to hide, hey, here's my tax affairs. By the way, didn't his niece, Mary Trump, she's put out a book, and apparently she was the woman that helped, was it the Washington Post or the New York Times, get some of his tax affairs in New York. She managed to point them in the right direction.
Yeah, I guess so. Interesting that 2 of the people that were appointed by Trump on the Supreme Court voted that he should disclose these to the prosecutor in New York. I guess he got to remember that that's what brought down Al Capone finally, was his tax returns. So, you could live in hope, I suppose.
The Americans take their time. I remember being in America in 1972, and it was there about the time of the end of the tax year, and I was living with a guy who owned a pub, and he was absolutely sort of filled with anxiety to ensure that that he got his tax returns in on time. The powers of the revenue in America are serious.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you see, I think it's different for people, certainly here, and I guess in the States too. If you're a salaried person, or if you're somebody who's working for yourself, got a business of some kind, if you're a salaried person, it's open and shut. You just get the tax taken from you, and that's it, really.
Yeah, that's it.
If you've got a business, you've got to draw up your own tax returns. Now, a guy like Trump is going to have the smartest accountants and advisors, financial advisors, showing him where to put his money, how to invest it, how to arrange it. I suspect they won't have given him advice that would break the law, but they'll find ingenious ways of bending the law. And those guys work for big money, and they're not doing it. Trump and company wouldn't pay them except it was to his advantage.
Jude, I think there might be more to it even than that. I would say what I would think or suspect that there could be payments to various Russian groups and deals with various Russians and all. I think it's politically that what he's worried about, that if the money trail leads to connections to developments, maybe a big hotel in Russia, paybacks and all this sort of stuff. I think that's really what he's worried about, because I think all that, if that started to come out before the election, he would be ruined. But Jude, the other side of the story is, I'm sort of going to contradict myself now. I get the impression that they know Trump's a crook. They know he's a narcissist. They know he's ignorant. They know he's never read a book. They don't care. That he stands for something. They want to go back to an America that was pre-Obama, where the white guys, the old guys, mom, apple pie, and the picket fence. That's what they want to go back to. And Trump stands for that.
I wouldn't be surprised, if Trump refused to give over his financial records or his tax affairs in the first place as a bluff. I wouldn't put it past him, but that they are actually in order, and then the Democrats put on tremendous pressure to get them. They finally get them, and there's no story. And he'll say, "Look, that's another example of persecution of me. It's this fake news thing." But the point is, the Democrats won't actually get their hands on it, as you say, until after the election. But it'll rumble on in the background there. It'll be a thought that people will have. What would they be likely to show? I suspect the Democrats will be content enough that at least they've got it on the menu, and that people might be thinking about it. Anyway, another thing you say now is he's got this dedicated group that they don't care what he does, shoot somebody in Manhattan or whatever. But a lot of if you take the midterm elections, that showed there's a lot of people who in the past had voted Republican, were voting for governors and so on, who were Democrats in states where there was a Republican.
Yeah, you would hope that's the case. Now, by the way, didn't Mary Trump say that Donald suffered from a learning disability? She also claimed that he got somebody to do what they call in America the SAT, to sit to enter university. That he got somebody to do that. And by the way, then he says he's a genius. Yet his former lawyer, what do you call him? Is it Gary Cohn? Got sent a legal letter around warning any disclosure of his grades at school would lead to immediate prosecution. So the stable genius mightn't be that stable, or he mightn't be that much of a genius either.
Well, she says that he's all screwed up. She blames Trump's father in the book, I gather. Says that he was bullied and he was broken in all sorts of ways, and that this explains this insecurity he has of having to try to dominate everyone and strut around. So really, she's in a way saying it's not his fault. He's the way he is. It's the way he was brought.
Yeah. Yeah, but that doesn't. When you're a malignant narcissist that uses everyone else, it's very hard to find an excuse for some of his behaviour.
Yeah. Well, anyway, in terms of the tax returns, I suspect that if they find them, they'll find that he has bent, or he's got his accountants to bend the rules very cleverly, but that he not have broken the law blatantly. Anyway, let's move on to another story, which is also financial, actually, and that's from the RT News Now website, and that is about Pascal Donohoe. Pascal Donohoe, as you know, was the finance minister. Is he? I think he's still the finance minister in the coalition, is he?
Yeah, he is. Yep.
So he's going to be the finance minister for the South, but he's also going to be the president of a group of Eurozone finance ministers. And essentially, he'd been overseeing the financial arrangements for recovery from the coronavirus or the COVID or whatever, or Brexit within the Eurozone. And that seems to me a hugely important, certainly a job with a lot of status to it. And to be honest with you, now I know it's wrong, as I know, to judge by appearances, but I wouldn't have said Pascal Donohoe was the first, would be the first person I'd think of in terms of political inspiration or strong leadership.
And Jude, something I have to say is I've watched him, for quite a long time. He's quietly impressive. When you watch him on TV, he's usually on top of his brief when they throw in a question from left field, a lot of ministers will say, "I'll get back to you on that. Oh, I need to check that out." Donohoe usually answers the question, and he's usually pretty good at it. You also, Jude, you're dead right. This is one of the big jobs in Europe. It's right up there with head of the Commission and so on. And during the financial crisis of several years ago, the head of the finance group was a major job, particularly in dealing with Greece, Ireland, Portugal, and so on. What is the so-called pig country? Portugal, Ireland, Greece, and Spain. So it's a big job, and for a small country, it's all about influence, Jude, isn't it? And this shows, Ireland has a lot of friends in Europe, and in the context of Brexit, it is actually quite an interesting appointment, because Donohoe will be very much central stage when Britain and Ireland and Europe all get together at the end of this year.
Yeah, I gathered that his appointment was a kind of a compromise. So he would act as a kind of a bridge between the Mediterranean countries like Spain and Italy and so on, and the more northern countries like Germany.
I think the ones, there's two groups: the southern ones who like to spend, and the other ones who are fiscally conservative. Donohoe was considered a sort of bridge between the two.
And the other thing was, I gather that the French and the Germans were for further financial integration. For example, they wanted to have the same corporation tax right throughout the EU, which actually might be bad news for Ireland, for the south of Ireland, that is. But he's seen as... I have a suspicion that he can't... If he's doing his job as finance minister in Ireland, in the south, right? I mean, that's a fairly full-time job. I suspect that what his job will be, and the other one will be to sort of oversee. It'd be like somebody coming to do a check that things are ticking over or going the general direction that he's for. Yeah. I don't see how he could throw his energies into that if he's really got the job of being finance minister for the South, which is going to be one hell of a job.
I don't know how the sort of mechanics of it work, but sometime maybe down, we could see him easing out of the job in Ireland, because I presume this appointment's for several years in Europe.
2.5 years.
And as you rightly pointed out, there's no way you can do both, because after COVID-19, Europe is going to need a massive stimulus package. It's going to need a lot of detail, a lot of hard work, and all the rest. You can't be sitting down in Dublin or wherever he's from. He is from Dublin, actually. And then trying to work out what's happening in Greece and Germany and the 27 countries.
Nobody has mentioned that. Nobody has mentioned that they're all saying, "Oh, this is terrific, and this is an honour for Ireland." And now between him and Phil Hogan and God knows who, the Irish will have a big say in Europe. There may be something of that in it, but nobody has ever said, "Well, listen, this guy's supposed to be doing a job. He's being paid quite handsomely by the Irish taxpayer." The other thing nobody says is, and I'd love to know the answer to this, how much is he being paid for this European job? Because the one thing that they all say, those people who know say, is that the EU doesn't hold back when it comes to giving people salaries. That's
the EU is a wonderful gravy train of all time, Joe. And by the way, there's never ever been any oversight of the EU. There's never been an audit of and the countries refuse. The salaries that are paid to these people, it's a king's ransom, and the expenses, japers. What I think the Irish MEPs were getting 400 euros for a flight, and you could hop on Ryanair. I'm sure they were over and back. They had a deal with Ryanair, probably 50 euros, maybe even free for all I know. But and it's a massive gravy train.
It really is, and I think that's part of the reason that Ireland and other countries are in the EU. But you see, I have mixed feelings about that, Pat. I agree with you. It is a real gravy train. I'll bet he's getting a whopping salary for that on top of his salary as a TD and a finance minister. But at the same time, even the EU is a gravy train. It has done such important work that I'd say it's money well spent. Anything that can pull Europe together and create it as a force in the world, I see as a good thing. I mean, just look at the last century's history. I mean, France and Germany especially, and they've overcome that. And you see, you know how hard it is to get people to work together. I'm sure of
Yep.
that. What kind of job must they've had to get all those countries to work together? And then you see the shots of these buildings in Brussels. I mean, fantastic, huge, gloriously modern buildings. I mean, how did they get these guys to do this? How did they persuade so many countries to do it? How did they get this thing called the EU to float?
Yeah. By the way, Jude, you've just basically given me John Hume's speech. I don't think you were aware of that. John Hume used to make that speech you've just made, and slightly different terms, but basically the same content about about the fact that Germany and France have gone to and Britain gone to war twice in the last century, millions dead, total alienation from one another, and the EU come along. And France and Germany are now big friends. There hasn't been a war in Europe, other than the Balkans, for a long time. That basically we're now working and we're unit and all the rest of it. Now, the Brits have obviously done something about that. But now, the other thing, just to throw a wee bit of cold water in what you're saying, the EU were not much friend to Ireland during the recession. They absolutely gutted us in regard to the bank charges thing. Yeah, no, we picked up 42%. And one of the EU guys said there will be a bomb going off in Dublin if you don't play ball with us. Now, to this day, nobody's was he talking metaphorically or literally? So there's another side to the EU. Now, I agree with what you're saying, Jude, but like the EU, I didn't like what they did to Greece. I didn't like what they did to Portugal. I didn't like what they did out in Cyprus. They absolutely stamped on the little guys, but they didn't push Spain around, and they didn't push France around, but they pushed Ireland around, and they pushed Greece around. There are parts of.
But then again, you have to balance, Pat. You have to balance that against the way that they handled things with regard to the Brexit campaign.
Yeah,
I mean, they were so important for the south of Ireland in terms of a border in Ireland after Brexit.
Yeah.
I mean, it was them that got that, not Leo or Yaman at all, Simon Coveney. It really was because the EU were backing them up to the hilt.
Absolutely.
Anyway, enough about the EU. I've already got to this last one of yours. You were suggesting, well, you tell us what your third mission was. I'll have to keep it short too, because we're going to run over.
Yeah, it's very short. No, have you get on social media now? Conspiracy theorists are everywhere, particularly in regard to COVID. There are guys who I don't think I've ever seen the inside of a medical lab who are now experts and who think they should be. Their views are on a par with Sam McConkey or the guy over in Britain or Dr. Fauci in America. And some of it is absolute rubbish. They're saying it's all a conspiracy theory by the liberals, like George Soros and Bill Gates, to take over the world, that they're going to try and sell vaccines. And some of the stuff is absolutely insane. But, it's like the Trump thing about the deep state, that he's telling his supporters that every time someone goes against him, that it's the enemies, that these people are un-American, and that he's the one true patriot. Well, this sort of stuff it's actually growing. The number of conspiracy theorists out there are now saying this whole thing about COVID is to bring in a global world, and we're all going to be under control of these globalists, and it's all a fake. And it seems to me insanity.
Well, I tend to agree with you. You do get some real headbangers on social media, and as you say, one encourages the other. The other thing, though, is why are they suspicious? I mean, why do they see conspiracies? I suspect it might have something to do with the fact that there have been conspiracies in the past. I mean, for example, you take the way that the Troubles, the war, was reported during, say, the 70s or the 80s in Irish newspapers, North and South, and British newspapers. I mean, they were reporting, for example, you remember Bloody Sunday. They reported Bloody Sunday exactly the way the British Army told them. And that was a gather common then, that what would happen is journalists would take a briefing, not even a briefing, a document from the British Army, and explaining, which would state the account of a particular incident, and it's simply printed in the newspaper without attributing to the British Army, of course. So there was an awful lot of things going on during the Troubles we didn't know about, and in fact they're true. Like, I mean, which of us would have thought there was a steak knife? Which of us would have thought that the British intelligence might have been involved in the Dublin Monaghan bombs? You know, there's so many things. That shows a seed of distrust, Pat, and that, I think, is why you got the.
Right, Jude, I take your point, but here, which do you believe? Do you believe that the climate, that there's no climate change, or because I say so, or do you believe a couple of thousand scientists from leading universities and leading organisations, reputable organisations, who say there is? Like, there's no way you should take my view about climate change, because I know bugger all about it. I'm not a scientist. I've never really done science and all the rest of it. That's the point I'm making. Surely you should make the judgment based on the best available evidence, not on some clown on Facebook.
Aye, that's true. The other thing, of course, is if you're talking about global warming, all you have to do is stick your head out the window.
Yeah. And by the way, Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot John F. Kennedy.
Were you the guy in the grassy knoll?
No, me and Jack Ruby were friends.
Okay, Pat. That's
all the best, Jude. Good luck.
All the best.